Welcome to the As Yet Unknown podcast. My name's Alex Snyder, your back pocket coach-sultant and connection catalyst. Entrepreneurship is a bit like bungee jumping, a big leap into the unknown, and it can be a lonely, bumpy ride. It's also one of the most empowering and liberating things you can do. Each episode is a dose of fresh perspectives designed to leave you feeling connected to innovative ideas and inspired about growing your business your way. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's have an adventure. So welcome, Edward. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited for today's conversation. You've spent nearly 2 decades in the financial accounting and tech world, working with business leaders, and you're the CEO and owner of Nisanov Tax Group, which focuses on proactive tax planning for service-based business owners. I feel like we're going to cover a wide range of topics today that's going to be valuable for so many people. But before we just jump right in, can you add anything you'd like in terms of introduce yourself, how you got into the tax business?
Sure. Yeah, Al. I'd like to start off by saying thank you so much for having me. I'm humbled to be here. I've been doing this for quite some time. Once again, my name is Edward Nisanov. Been doing this, as you mentioned, for about 2 decades now. It actually started as a family practice. My mom started a tax business when I was a little kid, and I grew up in the practice, and I worked my way through from the financial world, working in other accounting firms throughout my career, and I segued back into private, into the tax advisory.
Amazing. Oh, that's so cool that it's like a family business. You got to cut your teeth and experience a really broad range of things. We're coming back to that.
There.
So I want to start with something you said when you and I first connected that really stood out to me. And that was that you help business owners keep more of their hard-earned money.
Cool.
I think that's something we can all agree sounds great, especially as many business owners are struggling with the uncertainty of our current economic climate. Some of them are finding themselves needing to create leaner operating structures. So I'd love to start at a higher level, just understanding what are the things you're finding yourself discussing with your clients in general, and specifically what's coming into focus as the recession has taken hold the past few months.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to preface this by saying I work with a wide range of clients. I work with small business owners. We also work with affluent individuals. And from all perspectives, it's really, Edward, how can I save money? How can I keep more money in my pocket and grow my wealth? And that's always like in the forefront of these conversations. And the concern here is with recessionary times, what's going to happen to my job, right? Expenses are increasing every single month due to inflation. And we sit down and plan around that to see what my clients can do to be able to keep more of their hard-earned money in their pocket. A lot of it is based on tax strategy and other things that we're going to speak about.
So I had a professor in my MBA, and his motto was "Cash is king."
Love that.
But Italio is famous for saying cash is trash because it's perceived as safe, but really depreciates and loses buying power over time. So what is your take on the instinct to play it safe and hoard a war chest of cash?
Yeah, so that's actually a great point. And both phrases are really true. It just depends on where we are in the economy. So economy is doing great. Cash is really trash because there's no point of hoarding it, right? Tomorrow, you can get money, investing your cash into anything, real estate, you probably get it at a good price, take advantage of that. Now, when we flip it to the end that we're going into now, in recessionary times, now we can say cash is king. Why? Now's the time where the opportunities arrive. People may be losing their jobs. People may have to sell their homes, or maybe opportunities that you have to come in and you need that cash in your savings, and having liquid cash is what you need to be able to pull the trigger on an opportunity that otherwise, if you're using the cash as trash approach, you won't have it because your cash is tied up in assets.
Yeah, and I think opportunities, we talk a lot about this, and they do come up in recessions, and it can feel difficult. But I know when we were building our company, we were able to bring on employees at lower salaries that could grow with us because it resets things. There are distressed assets or opportunities to buy companies that can come up. There's all kinds of things, and having a certain amount of cash on hand can really be a big advantage that can mean that you are coming out of the recession in just a wholly different place as a company than a company that didn't have that capital.
Of course. Let's take it a couple of years ago. We had 2008 where the economy crashed, right?
Yeah.
Lots of wealth was generated during that time because real estate was so cheap. If you were working under the cash to trash model, your funds were already invested, they probably appreciated asset and missed out on that opportunity. So we may be seeing something like this in the cusp, and this is the time to go on cash.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of people are watching the real estate market. It's a great example, myself included, of like, what's the bottom? Like,
That's the
when
million
to
dollar
buy,
question. When to
but
buy.
absolutely planning for that. So how do you combat the depreciation of cash while maintaining liquidity? What are some options to not just sit on cash under your mattress?
Yeah, look, the answer that I would have said a year ago is completely different from what I would think today. Although the basics are the same, we may change the ratios around a little bit. What do I mean by that? Obviously, cash devalues every single month, right? It's just a natural occurrence. Time value of money. One way to combat that and be able to stay at the same time is break everything apart. I call it the one third method. What do I mean by that? Whether you're a small business owner or you're an employee, you get a paycheck or you're taking distributions out on a regular basis. Some people just take that entire check and put it in their regular operating account, their checking account at home. What I recommend is breaking it up into a third, right? Start small. Take a third and stock it away into savings. Take a third and use it to cover your living expenses and have a third for investment purposes, right? In that situation where that opportunity may arise and you have to pull the trigger. What I mentioned is don't just keep it in a regular checking. The landscape today, you should be taking advantage of. Why most of these savings accounts that are on the market, they're pushing close to 5% interest, just on a regular savings online banks. Go online, you find it right now. Again, this is what we had a year ago. So there's a lot of opportunity that we can take advantage of.
Yeah, I think that's something that for some people, they'll be like, of course. But then other people who are less familiar with the banking system, there are so many ways to earn interest. And the bank is using your money. So you should be getting something back
From the
for it.
prior.
Yeah. So obviously, the solution to difficult times is to sell more, right? Is to make more money. And you think about the profit equation is revenue minus expense. So if we're thinking about the revenue side is if you bring in more money, you should get to hopefully keep more of it. And I've definitely been talking to my clients for over a year now about looking for opportunities to lock in longer term contracts wherever possible in order to secure their pipelines of work and allow them to plan and invest more confidently, both in people and projects and things like that. But of course, the other side of the equation is how to reduce costs, expenses, any outlays, including taxes. What are the top areas that you look at with your clients to optimize profitability or just keep more of the money in the bank?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a great question. As you mentioned, and I as well, what we really do is look at the business from really a tax planning opportunity. There, we can say we find hidden fortunes inside somebody's business. A lot of things go on day to day where clients that come to me don't even know that they can take advantage of certain tax loopholes to be able to deduct it off of their business and keep more money in their pocket. The most basic things are home office deductions, being able to deduct your vehicle, right? Where you can even go into retirement plan. There are more oil strategies where you can hire your kids, cash balance plans for retirement. There are lots of things that we can do just within the business that sometimes people just leave on the table because they don't know that they can take advantage of it. When we do look at recessionary times and try to keep a profit high for every client that we work with, as you had said, the advice is always let's try to lock in a contract long term. Right? For us, we look at annual contracts, they're usually renewable, right? Because you're usually in this for the long term. It depends on obviously the industry that you're in, but that's what we're looking at. So these things really add up. We're that.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if there are any like ones that you find people miss most often? And or something I know when we went through the last, even the pandemic, let alone the 2008 recession, was governments put out new things to help businesses as well. So what's a good way to keep up on that? Because I will say one of the ways to, I know startups have stayed alive and grown is through understanding what's coming out, staying on top of it. And it can be a full-time job, having done it myself, to keep abreast and figure out how to do it. But it can be the difference between growing or whether you have to let go of employees. It can be a really big saving grace.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously there are ways to also think outside the box, right? So obviously there are new tax opportunities on an annual basis government does release. We want to take advantage of that for our full capacity, anything from research and development credits, the electronic vehicle credits on the personal side. But sometimes, as I mentioned, you have to think outside the box for actual capital. And how do we do that? We can tap in SBA funding, right? Again, I'm in the US, just to make it fair. For the Small Business Association, you can tap into that if you're starting a business and you come up with a business plan and provide it to them. They'll give you funding, right? It's not just for a business, it could also be for real estate. We can tap into that. A lot of people, I would say, don't realize the power of leveraging credit card. If you're starting out your small business, you may not have the capital. I would say you can use credit to your fullest advantage. How? You have 12 to 18th month, 0%, especially interest-free loan that you can tap into to fund your business, even if it's done on the personal, right? Usually I say you have to be careful with this because obviously it's debt. You ultimately have to pay it back. You can come up with a payment schedule yourself and be on top of it and get that funding if all the other channels are depleted. And then how can you get 0% when it comes to it?
Yeah, that's a great point because I always think, how can you, the government is usually the one that will put out grants or credit. I'll speak to Canada during COVID. There was 3-year interest-free loan of $40,000 to $60,000. There was that was on top of other credits that were not loans, that were just, if you could show you were retaining people, you could get X amount of their wages. But credit cards at 0% for a certain amount of time is an alternative or, exponential opportunity on top of that. And is that really common?
It's not as common from the people that I speak to. This is a lot of advice that I give out. And then people are just blown away sometimes. Hey, I didn't think of that. I'm a huge fan of credit cards. As long as you don't find yourself, right? You have to manage that. Again, there's 0% loans for 30 days. Have to pay it back. Sometimes they come with these 0% interest promotions for 12 to 18 months. You can keep using them. You can play the balance transfer game, right? That's all okay as long as you're on top of it. You're going to do mine. And the best side here is whenever you're using your card, you have to get one, right? So you can use that yourself personally. And going back to a point, you made a very good point, right? I'm operating under the assumption that all these COVID credits have already been taken advantage. In the United States, there were daycare protection programs, there were loans, 30-year loans that they gave out, the EIDLs at a 3.75% rate, which is right now an amazing thing in retrospect, right? There are ERC credits rather, where you can submit a claim per employee that was employed during COVID. A lot of these should have been already taken advantage of at this point, this far out. But yeah, that was also a great opportunity.
Yeah. And I just want to point out, if you're listening and you're like, I had no idea about any of this. It is really normal, right? Like you and I, we do this day in and day out. It's what we think about. But a lot of business owners are just like, they're overwhelmed. They're just trying to get through the day. And now they've got to deal with a difficult economy. So is there somewhere that beyond Google that is a really good place to learn about this? Or do you recommend having a conversation with a professional? I often say professionals usually pay for themselves through savings in their advice.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Obviously, I'm sitting in the professional seat. Actually, with that point in, when you're speaking to somebody and they're asking you pointed questions, if you're speaking to a qualified professional that's been doing this for long enough, they can analyze that entire conversation and give you actual tangible advice has actionable points where you can go ahead and implement the same day. And yeah, as you said, they usually pay for themselves, if not being a return on your investment right away. But there are many other sources that you can probably access outside of that. I don't want to say Google, although we sometimes can use that to get the bigger picture. It's a great start, but you have to make sure that you're reading a publication that's embedded. Most of the Google results are pretty good when it comes to articles in Forbes, when it comes to articles in Kiplinger, things, publications such as those are great. We use those as resources.
Yeah. And if you're looking at really legitimate from publications, they'll usually have links as well to a government site or to something within the article. So that's a really great trusted source as well. It might.
Correct. Yeah, you can always go to the IRS website. You can go to your state and local websites. But can be a little cumbersome, but they're not really. Yeah.
People anxiety.
Yeah. As you had mentioned, we've been doing this for long enough. We know how to navigate it. So it's like a comic book section, the comic cartoon comics for us. So there's the reality.
Yeah, definitely. One thing beyond the tax and the credits and the way to access capital, because I do think that is a really great place to look, is operations. And it's something that even in good times, I'm a huge proponent. Operational efficiency is part of what I work on with my clients. But in difficult times, one thing that I like to think of as an analogy is planning in advance so that you just have to execute difficult decisions, not make them in hard emotional times. So I'm a big proponent of that. I've been talking to my clients for over a year about how to plan for the recession. And it's like a backup plan you don't want to use. But if you get to the point where your contracts are not sufficient, you're incoming, and you can't access enough capital to keep running, figuring out how to reduce and what the thresholds of when you're going to make decisions and what decisions. I'm a big proponent of advance. And the analogy I like to think of is like fat, muscle, and bone, right? Like you don't want to be cutting down to the bone, but you do want to know what could you get rid of that isn't going to massively impact your ability to operate and grow and come back. And then your muscle is, we're going to feel it, but we can survive it. And then you get down to the bone is really hard. But knowing your numbers and knowing at what point you need to make what decision and kind of having that as like your emergency plan. I'm a big proponent of that. I'm curious in terms of knowing your numbers or metrics that you track with clients for those decisions, if there's anything you share strategically as advice.
Yeah, everything you said, the fact you have to know your numbers on a regular basis. I would say at the very least on a monthly basis, you can have a great set of financials, depending on the size of the company, and know what your spending power is, not just through cash. You have to know your cash on hand. You have to understand what the liabilities are to be able to service that debt. And at the end of the day, you have to know if you can go forward or make payroll for the next month. You essentially said trim the fat recently, right? So recessionary times, we're facing it now. I think it was Google had to trim the fat recently, right? They got rid of, I think, snacks and lunches or something like that for employees, if I'm not mistaken. Something like this, and Facebook is also trimming. These large companies are already starting to trim fat. As you said, when you're looking at a smaller business, we already try to operate optimally, right? When you have a small business plus employees, there are things that you may not be able to trim when it comes to regular occurring overhead expenses, rent. There are salaries you may need to trim. It's something that we want to try to push off as far as possible. But to your point, that's something that you definitely have to plan ahead, right? So if you see that the trajectory of income is going down month after month, the contracts are drying up, recessionary times are coming and people are pulling out from whatever service that you're offering, then that may be somewhere you have to visit. And unfortunately, it happens. But if you're planning ahead for it, it's a little less painful than having to do it just overnight.
Yeah. And it allows you to also think about the longer term implications, right? There may be people in your company that would be so hard to replace when you're ready to go back. So how can you manage? Maybe it's having conversations and maintaining morale about during COVID, for example, a lot of people came down to 80%, both time and pay, or even less. Higher up people took bigger cuts than more junior people. And I will also say, in my experience, I'd love to know yours, is everything is negotiable. Like trying to find a new tenant in this time is going to be really difficult for your landlord. So if you are struggling, don't ask, don't get, right? So it never hurts to have a conversation about what maybe could an arrangement be for the next few months?
You're right. And that's also a different animal completely, right? Speaking from a landlord's perspective, a tenant that is there, takes care of the property, pays on time, they're usually worth their weight in gold. So if they come up to you and say you're and themselves go up to the lever, or they come to tenant comes up to me and says, "Hey, listen, it's been tough for us. Let's negotiate the rent down." Maybe a great opportunity, because who knows who's going to come in, if they're going to be able to demand the same rent in recessionary times. And who knows if the next tenant is going to be able to pay and be a good tenant. So obviously that's a great point to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. I think to your point of know your numbers, know your expenses, know what costs you and what it represents, and assess in advance, like what are the levers, as I always say, what are the levers that you can pull to get to where you need to be, and understand the impact of those, right? Obviously, if you have a terrible relationship with your landlord, that's like a different conversation. But if you ever, even as a person, I have
you can also go back. You can also go back with the same kind of approach with employees as well, right? So during recessionary times, if there are other things you can provide to them, depending on the entity structure. Sometimes you may want to bring in equity, right, to keep those employees that may be high performers that financially you can't support anymore, but maybe that may be enticing enough for them to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a good point, is crossing into like team and people management, but knowing what matters to people, whether that's knowing what matters to your landlord in terms of a long-term tenant that takes care of the building, whatever that might be, knowing your team, what matters to them, what's important, how integral are they to the success of the company, and how much do they want to grow with the company, and whether that's work schedules or work from home or career progression or equity. All of those things come into play. And I think this is where you mentioned think outside the box. When it comes to your team and your engagement, it's very much that way as well. And also with clients, if you want to offer early payment incentives, I've seen that done as well.
Yeah.
Having people pay.
Front load the contract and give them a certain percentage off the annual dollar.
Yeah.
In that respect, cash is king there.
Yeah, exactly. What can you do and what's it worth to you? Because if you have a ton of cash in the bank, then it's different. Then maybe you can actually go the other way and bring in more by giving other people a bit of a break. But you want to make sure that you're managing your risk as well as your cash.
Do you see that a lot of your clients and people you work with, do you have a lot of cash in the bank in reserves?
It's really mixed. Yeah,
Okay.
it's really mixed. Tends to depend on the business model, like what they're doing.
And if it's a capital intensive business where they need it for inventory or something like that, I would expect it.
Yeah.
On the other side, from a service business perspective, as long as you have at least 6 months to cover overhead, owners generally want cash in the pocket. So they don't really pull that out unless there's some growth in the horizon.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, because a lot of my clients have a lot of their costs are people. And that is something we talk about a lot, the runway, right? Which if you're in like the venture cap space, you would call burn rate, right? What's your runway? How long can you operate at this level? What's your plan? Do you need more people? Or if you're starting to cut, less people? That's definitely a huge one. What do you see? Or do you have a recommendation you give in terms of X amount of runway? How many months do you like to see people planning for? 6.
Yeah, but you want to play it safe to be able to get to the next 6 month mark. Hoarding cash outside of that may not be necessary if you have a healthy business. I want to say, obviously, COVID is not the norm. Like hopefully a once in a lifetime occurrence for us. During those times, we're shady possible to predict. So even if you had 6 months, that may not have lasted. That's why the government came in and assisted small businesses, et cetera, with subsidies and rents. But it'd be a pretty healthy number to be able to pay rent, to be able to pay your employees, but to continuously run the business. If you're cash intensive, you have inventory to buy, be able to do that. You can also look at different terms with your vendors, right? If you do have that inventory, that's like the comfortable number what we may want. And again, going back to where we are today, you don't want that money just sitting around. If it's enough with an account, put it into a higher yield savings account. A little harder for businesses to get these rates that we're speaking about, 5%, generally a little lower, but have it work for you. You also don't really want to tie it up into a CD in the business unless you do have a lot of cash and can continuously revolve it. We had an opportunity with I bonds not too long ago in the US. These were inflationary treasury bills based on inflation Last year, they were hovering around 9.62. Today's rate is about 4.3. Still pretty good. Still pretty good. They're fairly liquid. Just a small penalty if you decide to pull out. So that could be an option. There's a limitation of what you can buy. It's around $10,000. But every little bit counts when you're pulling your money and trying to earn a couple of bucks on the money that's sitting there, not doing anything.
Right. You mentioned your 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 rule with saving, living expenses, and investment purposes. And I'm wondering two things. The first being, does that mean that your general kind of rule of thumb is that your living expenses should only be 30% of your incoming?
In an ideal world,
Yeah.
in an ideal world, yes. I realize that it doesn't always happen. So depending on who I'm speaking to, we start small. I always say, pay yourself first with we're saving 10% of your paycheck, right? Ideally, you want to take a look at what you're making a year and how much you're spending. If you are living to paycheck to pay or paycheck to paycheck or distribution, it's already a problem, right? Most of the time, it's just frivolous spending that you don't need. You can cut it out. So like going out, buying clothes, a lot of this stuff is really unnecessary. You may want to explore kind of your life around that, assuming that there's no opportunity to earn more money, right? Regardless, you want to pay yourself first. Start small, 10%. Every single paycheck you get, the distribution you take out of your business, take 10%, put it in a savings, preferably a high yield savings account, and forget about the month. Forget that it even exists. Don't look at it. Don't link it to your online banking account. No, think that it's not there at all. It's going to be an emergency fund. Before you know it, that thing is going to grow pretty soon, especially if it's earning compound interest. And then you start increasing it if you realize that, hey, you know what? I'm actually able to survive on this 90%. Not that bad. I actually don't need XYZ that I've been purchasing unnecessarily. We're cutting that out, right? Again, this is if you're not in control of your business, of your fund, if you can't increase your inflow. Don't want that savings. That's where we are. Ideally, we would go into 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, depending on where you are. So we have
Something to work.
something to work. You can get to the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 part. But again, the most important component is that savings and that liquid account where you can just pull the trigger if the opportunity arises for business investments, for real estate, etc. That's what we mean by 1/3.
Yeah. And so my other question was around the investment purpose, the liquidity. One of the pillars of the season of conversations in Lay's Live is the belief that great companies are built in recessions with the right strategy, allocation of resource, community. So when you're talking about having money available to invest and also looking at ways to increase your incoming, your revenue, what's your take on that? What have you seen people create and how in the big picture and maybe even in your client roster?
Yeah, sure. Lots of huge companies were actually created in recessionary times. You look at Apple, Microsoft, GM, IBM, Uber, Instagram. This is an opportunity to take a chance. I'm always about take that chance. It doesn't have to be your primary source of income. It can be a side hustle based on the 24-hour in a day. You sleep for 8 hours. Most of the people don't, right? You sleep for 6 to 7 hours. You have the rest of the day working 9 to 5. You have many hours that you can utilize to build something. You have to be persistent and you got to through with it and not just give up after a month and you realize it's not working, right? These are service-oriented businesses. It can be something based on internet, like the Snapchats of the world, Instagrams of the world rather, or you can actually seize the opportunity during recessionary times. As I said before, 2008, you had cash, you made a killing. You made a killing building up your, real estate portfolio on distressed properties, and then you're just writing it out. And then real estate is another animal, is in that world, you could potentially not pay tax on the flips as you're upgrading the property and buying another one through 1031 exchanges. The opportunity is there. You just have to be ready for it. As you said, plan for it when it does.
Yeah. And we have had such a shift in the way we work in terms of remote or flexible schedules that I think there is this opportunity to create a little more time to experiment. The access to information these days is so different that entrepreneurship is not, I would say, the closed black box that it used to be. If you look at things like Shopify, you can get a website up in 2 days with a small investment and just try stuff.
right? There's so much opportunity there, and you don't have to set up an incorporation immediately just to like transact or experiment.
Yeah, if it works, you can do it from the comfort of your own home. You don't have to leave. You have everything at your fingertips. And now we're facing a new technological revolution. We're trying to embrace it and understand it now, but AI is already here, right?
Yeah.
Here's another wave of opportunity. Now it's just how do we tap into it and use it, in our favor and for our advantage. I'm excited to see what the next couple of years will give us.
Yeah, AI, we can have a whole conversation on that. I think the other thing I will say is it doesn't necessarily, if you are a small business owner, it doesn't necessarily have to be another business. We had a guest previously, Kirsten, who spoke to, if it's in the voice of the customer, you can't go wrong. Ask your customers what they need, what they want. There are often, added value or ancillary services or things that you can do to support them more and capture more of their share of wallet, right? There's a lot of creativity. And if you are finding things to be a bit slow and you have a little bit of that cash to support yourself and your team, this is the time to listen and learn and experiment. Would you agree? And that's my view.
Yeah, I think that should be status quo when you're dealing with your customers. You always want to understand what else can we do? What else do they need? And if it's something that we can provide, great. If not, let's seek out a way to provide it to them. This is something that I've been working on for several years now, and a network with professionals that we can refer our clients to. Because previously they would just come to us and say, hey, do you have a great attorney or a financial advisor? And then you would say no, and then they come back to you with something that a financial advisor just jumped in their face just to make a commission, clearly on their best interest. You cringe because you weren't able to take care of it, right? So things like that. And speaking to that, you can also bring that in-house, right? For example, right? Provide financial services in-house, life insurance in-house, hire to work with you as well, and also be able to monetize.
I think that's such a good point. I was just say there's that saying like your network is your net worth. And that we'll think of that in like personal terms a lot, but actually in business, and this is something I've worked with a few clients on, is you don't have to be able to do it right away, but having a partner that you can refer to and get a 5 to 10% kickback or more, like what an easy way to make money, right? Find someone that you trust that can do the things that your clients are asking for and just get paid to introduce them. Like amazing.
And
bring it.
It's a win, right? Obviously, depending on the industry, there's some restrictions as to profit sharing, etc. But if you plan and it works out, you've solved the client's problems, right? You're a superstar, which you want to do all the time. They're in good hands. And then, okay, so you make a little money on the side. That doesn't hurt anybody. So that's great. Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And I also want to make another point with the internet and social media channels, etc., veering off. A lot of people do have social media presence, etc. There's a whole other world to tap into there with what we just spoke about with affiliate marketing, right? That's a whole other app.
Yeah, and just helping your clients solve the problems that you've solved for yourself. And affiliated marketing can take such a broad range, but it can even be like an Amazon, like having affiliated Amazon links for the things that you use the most, depending what you're doing, whether your clients are going to care what you use. But in some cases, just being like, you're the easiest place to find these things that you're going to need to do the thing I'm helping you do, like could be an extra few percent on whatever you're doing.
And it all adds up at the end of the.
Yeah. So we had a really specific question that came in on the LinkedIn channel, and I wanted to ask you, the question was, what is the best type of retirement plan for individuals operating small businesses? And maybe like one answer, but at least some guiding principle.
Yeah, certainly. That's one of my favorite questions. It's a popular question, and answer is always, it depends. I know I hate saying that. I know people hate hearing it, but the answer is it depends, because it depends on where you are financially and how much you're looking to sock away and what the ultimate goal is, right? In the US, you have a handful of options, right? It's a SEP account, it's a SEP IRA, or you can do a 401k plan as a small business owner. You can balance it out with a cash balance plan if you want to invest much more, higher number. A lot of these plans, you have to realize that you also have to share with your employees, right? So you have to match contributions that your employees do as well. So what the best one is depends on how much you want to invest and what the ultimate goal is. There are also Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks that you can invest in, which is actually an after-tax account. So you don't get an immediate tax benefit today. Everything grows tax-free. And when you retire, you pull the money out and you don't pay tax on it. So it really depends on the entire, financial picture and what your ultimate goal is.
Amazing. Yeah. And if you're not in the US, again, Google is your friend here. Put these terms in and with your country and ask what's the equivalent, or ChatGPT. In Canada, this would be things like RRSPs and TFSAs. In the UK, there's another version of that. So just to anyone that's listening that's not from the US, these exist in a lot of countries, definitely Commonwealth countries, but a lot of other ones as well. So one thing I want to close out on, both of us have been through a few recessions or recessionary type periods in our careers. If you've shared so much valuable information that people can think about in their planning, in their incomings, and how to handle certain things, but if you can leave everyone with 1 to 2 takeaways from seeing these cycles and seeing the pitfalls and the opportunities, what would those be?
I keep reverting back to having that liquidity and being able to pull the trigger when the time comes. I've seen it several times already, not just in the real estate market, but also in the stock market. Monitor it. A lot of people sell out of fear, right? And if you have the wherewithal to pick up on what's going on and that trigger, it's not always easy, but it'll pay multiple at the end of the day. But in order to do that, you have to have that cash in the That's one of the most important things that I can emphasize here when it comes to recessionary times. Obviously, we always look back also and say, make sure that you're operating your business optimally from a tax perspective. Make sure that you're not leaving cash on the table and taking advantage of the tax loopholes. It can be the smallest thing, from writing up your home office to hiring your kids from an income shifting strategy. Because you're at a 37% tax rate, you can pay your kid $13,000 and they pay $0. If you have two, 3 kids, that's a lot of money that you keep in your pocket. And there's so many more to discuss. Not that much time to go over everything, but you have to work with a qualified professional to be able to understand your business and keep more money in your pocket.
Yeah. Talking about that can be a huge difference, right? We're thinking about your tax rates in extending that runway that we were talking about, of like how long you can experiment or weather a difficult storm. Edward, thank you so much. I think there was so much value in this episode. So I'm really excited for joined us and everyone that's going to be listening to this. If people want to learn more about you or connect with you, what's the best place to find you?
Sure. Yeah, Alex, thanks so much for having me once again. You can find me at my website, nisanovtax.com. There's a hire us button you can put there, contact us, fill out a form. Be happy to connect with you. I also have a social media presence, Taxfish Maxes. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and on Facebook. So feel free to send us a DM. I'll be happy to.
Amazing. Thank you again. Really appreciate it. And have an amazing rest of the day, everyone.
Thanks so much. You too.
Thanks for tuning in. Our goal is to create connections and inspire conversations. So please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast with your network if you enjoyed today's episode. Sharing is caring. If you're ready to take your business to the next level and are curious how I can help, click the link in the episode notes to schedule a call. Got questions or topics you want us to discuss? Click the link in the episode notes to share them with us. Your question might even get featured in an upcoming episode. And remember, this podcast is not intended to replace legal, tax, or other kinds of professional advice. Thanks for joining us on this adventure. We'll catch you on the flip side.